Good afternoon, everybody. Very welcome to this webinar from Media and Learning that we have organized together with Ubicast, of which we have, in fact, as one of our guests, the CEO, Jean-Marie Cognet. Very happy to welcome you. This is going to be a webinar about video lifecycle management, a hot topic at the moment, where we're going to explore especially the options and conditions to archive and reuse educational video material, which does not mean that things that happened before that are not important. I think, for example, of having like a policy beforehand with regard to what will need to be archived. I can imagine that, for example, a tutorial about software may not need to be archived except for vintage reasons, because they may change every couple of months. So things about having a policy, and then what do you do with all the content that you have? How do you safeguard them for the future? May I invite you all to add your name to your video? Keep your video on if you can, so that we're not talking to just a blank screen. Add your name and, if possibly, also your institution to your name, so that we know who you are. We are recording the event so that people that are missing this event can watch it later on, or you can review it if you like it later on. Anyway, leave your comments, your questions in the chat. We will pick them up later after all the presentations, so that we can have a little bit of discussion. And then the next thing that I would like you to do is, Sharon is going to put up a poll. We would like to ask you some questions about your archiving, your storage, your life cycle management, if you like. We would like to get your opinion about this. We leave the poll on during the first slide, so that you can have a look during the first presentations, so that you can have fill them in whenever that you like. Okay. So, without much more of ado, I would like to introduce our presenters. We have three representatives of the higher education EdTech community. We have Peter Fletcher from the University of Aberdeen. We have Tim Waldman from Wageningen University and Research. And as I said, Jean-Marie Cognet from Ubicast, who is co-organizer of this webinar. I would like to, I'm not going to take much more of the time, but I'm going to ask Peter to start with his presentation. Peter's an engineer and manager with experience in TV and radio and BBC and in the commercial sector. He is currently the head of the audiovisual team of the University of Aberdeen in Scotland, and he designs and supports teaching spaces, creates videos, production in person and online events, in face-to-face and online events. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you everyone for coming. Let me just rearrange my many windows. I'm trying to do this on a laptop. So as Matthew mentioned, I'm Peter. I'm the audiovisual manager at the University of Aberdeen. My team maintain and support classroom technologies of various kinds, including lecture capture. We also do event production, both in person and hybrid and online. We also provide kind of wider media services, so video production, photography, graphical design, and as well as doing all this for the University of Aberdeen, we provide the same services to the local National Health Service Board for historical reasons, it's fair to say. This is the compulsory marketing slide I must include when presenting to external audiences. There's the Northern Lights, and what normally happens here, I say, the thing you need to know is Aberdeen, it's really far north and it's really cold. And then someone from Norway or Finland will come on and tell me that Aberdeen is practically tropical and I should be wearing my shorts. So I'm going to talk to you today about video and what we do with video. I'm going to start by talking about what we do now, which is okay. And then I'm going to talk about our legacy and our archive, which is fair to say is a problem. So this is where we are now. This will be brief because I don't think it's that different to what anyone else is doing particularly. So we do lecture capture. Lecture capture is compulsory for all our lectures at Aberdeen, although it is a manual process. So the academic will manually start that recording on the lectern PC. So we've got about 100,000 videos, 47,000 hours in the production server. Videos that are older than 3 years and not viewed in 1 year get moved to the archive, where we've got another 100,000 videos. And then if a video is older than 6 years and not being viewed in 4 years, they get deleted permanently. And that's how we kind of manage the storage costs, but also the size of the archive. Very occasionally, we do get people come to us and go, I made this great video 8 years ago. And then we have to say, tough. So that's what we're doing for lecture capture. For our kind of marketing photos and videos, we're storing those on a product called Asset Bank. We've got about 7 terabytes of material there. Goes back to about 2001. It's never archived or deleted. That's mainly because at the moment it's an on-premise server. So as we run out of room, we just go to our IT friends and say, can we have more room, please? And they say yes, because currently their storage capacity is growing faster than when we're using it. The Asset Bank needs replacing. Their replacement product and other similar products are all cloud-based, when storage will come with a cost. So perhaps we'll have to then come up with a process for how we manage that. And then my video team, there's 3 of them, and they mostly just use a Windows file server. They've got about 17 terabytes on there, going back to 2011. They occasionally go through and delete things, but it's a very manual process, and there's no official rule as to what gets deleted and what doesn't get deleted. Now, I'm aware none of that is perfect, but it kind of works for us. It's evolved over time. It wouldn't be what I'd do if I was starting from scratch, but that's where we are. And it works. So here's the problem. We've been here over 500 years, and we have a lot of content. This person here on the left is Pope Alexander VI, who allegedly was the most corrupt pope in history. But between having lots of parties in the Vatican and having children all over the place, he decided the north of Scotland is full of heathens and it needs a university. So he wrote a document telling King James IV in the middle and Bishop Elphinstone of Aberdeen on the right to start a university. That was in 1495. And if you told me that in 1496, he then said, you should record lots of videos and store them on really obscure formats, I would believe you. What actually happened is these people came along. This is a photo from 1969. The British government wanted to double the number of students going to university. And our academic said, this is outrageous. We can't possibly teach in our current format with additional students. Worth bearing in mind that these staff to student ratios are ratios that our current staff would absolutely dream of. But they said, we can't teach all these people in person. We need to make videos. So the Aberdeen University Television Service was born. And here they are. And there was 3 of them then, and there's 3 of them now. The main difference is that these people have bothered to put on a shirt and a tie and a suit, and these people all have hair. But otherwise, nothing has changed in the 56 years that have happened since. So we've got 56 years of content. Where is it? What do we do with it? So we've got a recent archive, and this is kind of okay. So this is some shelves at the back of one of our edit booths. We have 3 edit booths, one for each of the video producers, and they've each got some shelves with a selection of various camera tapes and DVDs on the shelves. It's kind of catalogued, it's labeled. We can still convert it to more usable formats if we need to, but we only get about 1 request a year. So is it worth the effort of trying to convert all that into digital files? Currently, we're thinking no, but also we're aware that there'll come a point when we can no longer access these tapes. But that's where we are. So what about the even older stuff? This here is the Holworth Auditorium. It's our main teaching lectures theatre for our medical school, which is based at our hospital campus. And you're probably thinking, oh, it's very nice and very modern. It's got nice chairs, nice carpet, nice lectern. But then you might look up and notice the ceiling and go, strange ceiling. So about 3 years ago in the UK, we had a problem with roofs. It turned out that in the 1960s and 70s, people thought they could save money by making the roofs of universities, hospitals, council buildings out of what's essentially concrete sponge. And then over decades, it's crumbled and then became dangerous, and the whole thing had to be sealed off and out of bounds and replaced. And inevitably, like all lecture theatres, this had a projection booth at the back, which was also where the medical school video archive lived. Because the roof was having to be removed and replaced, we had to remove the archive, and we had to do it quickly. So it ended up like this. Worth saying that even when it was in the projection booth, we still didn't, it was not labeled, and we still had no catalogue. So moving it and just dumping it in a pile didn't really make things any worse, but it certainly didn't make things any better. This stayed here for 2 years, and people kept saying, we should do something about it, but no one ever did. And then my boss was nagging me to destroy it because he thought it was a fire risk. So we did that, and it was probably not the right thing to do. So first of all, it upset all our archiving people, and it upset all our data protection people, because some of these tapes, being the medical school, had patients on them who probably had not given consent. But equally, they'd been aware of its existence for 2 years and done nothing about it. The other problem we had was that it turned out some of this material was so old, it included slides with live medical samples on. So we sent this to like an IT tape shredding company, who were then very upset to be receiving medical samples. So lesson number 1, do not do that. Here's another lecture theatre. This is our biggest lecture theatre at our main campus in Old Aberdeen. It's called the Arts Lecture Theatre. And inevitably, it also has a projection booth, and inevitably, it's also full of old tapes. Now, we've learnt a valuable lesson from what happened at the medical school, so we decided we're going to keep it, but do nothing. This is generally catalogued, but it's so old that we have no machines capable of reading any of the tapes. Some of them we know are very moldy. I'm expecting a lot of them have been demagnetized. So that's our current status quo, but it's probably not recommended. So what to do? In a previous life, as Matthew said, I worked in broadcasting. I worked for BBC, and one of the things I had to do was occasionally kick the BBC Sport tape robot when it got upset. Now, the BBC had clearly decided that spending millions of pounds on a tape robot, well, 2 tape robots across 2 sites for redundancy, simply so that people could watch England lose at the football on a regular basis. They thought that was a great use of money. But for a university, is it? We know Matthew's mentioned that, some of the material is going to be out of date, but some of it could be valuable. But in the UK, especially at the moment, we have lots of funding problems. How much should we spend preserving this archive if there doesn't really seem to be much of a demand to actually use it? And also, digitizing all those tapes and then keeping the robot, and that's a lot of power, it's a lot of materials. Is that a very environmental solution? So what actually happens at Aberdeen is I keep having this conversation. I meet people and I say, we've got all this old stuff. And they say, some of it could be very valuable. And they're right, some of it could be. There's probably videos of the Queen owning new buildings. There's probably some educational videos that we could reuse for online education and sell for micro-credentials. And I say, yes, but digitizing it and cataloging it is hard and it's expensive. Probably about 5% of it's actually useful. We don't have machines that can read most of the tapes. Someone actually would need to sit down and watch them if it's not catalogued. And they say, yes, but it's very important. It's part of our institutional history. And I say, great, can I have some money? Because either we need to get all these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tapes and post them to a company that specializes in this kind of thing, and they're going to charge us lots of money. Or we need to recruit people and buy machines off eBay and get people to scan them. And frankly, they're probably going to go mad watching all these old videos. And it's going to take a year at least. And they say, well, there's no money. So then nothing happens for 6 months. And then I meet a different senior manager. And I mention that we've got all these old tapes and, you know, it could be valuable, but the longer we leave it there, the harder it is to actually extract any value from it. And then we have the same conversation again. So, can we use the archive? Is the next question. This here is Edward Said. He was an American Palestinian academic and philosopher and writer and musician. And because of the current situation in the Middle East, there's a lot of renewed interest in his writings. And somebody out there is making a documentary about his life. And they got in touch with us and said, do you have any video or photo of him getting his honorary degree from the University of Aberdeen? And I said, probably somewhere. So I said, well, it might be in here, or it might be in here, or it might be in here. Actually, no, it's not in there because we threw that all away. Or these people might still have it, but we don't know. And we've probably spent a lot of time looking for this video and completely failed to find it and had to go back and said, well, we don't know. We might have it somewhere, but we can't find it. And we've probably reached the limit of how much effort we want to put in looking for it. But it turns out that AI is our friend. Because you can ask AI to recreate your archive when you can't find it. So this is from Adobe Firefly. And I said, can you create me a photo of Edward Said graduating from University of Aberdeen? And it went, ta-da! And that was a lot quicker than searching through the archive. Admittedly, it's not perfect. The academic dress is correct. Everyone is very white and very pale, so you know you're in Northern Scotland. The background looks a bit church-like rather than university-like, and I'm not sure about this banner in the top left, and I'm not sure why they're both holding scrolls, because surely one of them should be passing it to the other one. But in terms of saving effort in searching an archive, this is a very quick solution. It turns out not only can AI produce things that you've lost from your archive, AI can also produce things that were never in the archive in the first place. So maybe we don't need an archive. That's it. I'm aware that was probably quite provocative. Happy to take any questions now or at the end.
And it's not quite provocative. I think it's incredibly provocative. I must say I'm also a media producer, so it really shakes me in my bones to hear you say something like that. Okay, I invite everybody to keep their questions until the end. We'll definitely come back to you, Peter, because if nobody, I definitely have a question for you. But I would like to see if Tim Wallman can warm our heart a little bit after this kind of depressing story.
Sure.
Tim Wallman, he's from Wageningen
Yeah.
University. He has spent 20 years designing, developing, and implementing digital learning experiences and programs for blended and fully online contexts in academic, non-profit, and for-profit settings in several countries. And for the past 10 years, he has led content development teams in the United States and the Netherlands. And he's the product owner of the educational media services of Wageningen University and Research. So is your situation comparable to what we heard of Aberdeen?
Yeah, well, we don't have a medical school, but I laughed the entire way through Peter's presentation. Thank you so much for that. So much of what Peter said is fully relatable. I will just share my screen for a moment and then look to Matti for confirmation that you can see it. Awesome. Okay. So yeah, it's so much of what Peter, you said is fully comparable. So thank you for the humor. It did warm my heart, and I would agree that your question at the end was provocative. Here we see, for me, this image sort of sums it up. The notion of somebody. how do you call it? Like holding on to a tiny bit of information for a long time and wondering what to do with it. I'll just jump in the interest of time. Matti actually just said this. My name is Tim. I'm the product owner of educational media at Wageningen University. And I've been in this field for a while, but I've actually never had as much of an issue with archiving. So this is a very poignant topic for us, where we are currently trying to figure out what to do with this. Just to sketch a little bit of context for a moment, educational media services also include at Wageningen University lecture capture, or as we call them, web lectures. We do that from 63 rooms throughout our campus, so it's not mandated at Wageningen as it is at Aberdeen. But we do produce a lot of content. We have thousands and thousands of web lectures annually, and thankfully, most of them are successful, but for the most part, we do end up with 8,000 plus per year. Currently, because we haven't done such a good job of throwing things away, with a small exception of when we moved from a legacy system onto a SaaS-based system a few years ago, we had a purge, but it was more of the question of, hey, this is a very functional purge. We're moving away from a legacy system. What can we do now in order to save money? Because moving that content required extra hands to do something with that content, figure out what to do. So there was a small purge some years ago that was quite an exception. But for the rest, we are holding on to a ton of content, also in physical copies. Just as Peter said, we have over 52,000 assets at current and thousands of courses. And that's lecture capture. Next to that, we also create media like knowledge clips. Here to the left, you see a very common example. I don't know why it's on bright pink, but I actually kind of like it. It catches the eye really quickly. And it's not just talking head clips that we make. We also create interactive media, screencasts, podcasts, and we use, not everything is purely audio or video. We also use authoring software to create, for example, the interactive experiences. And sometimes when we can't just easily film something in our studios, we go to, for example, a laboratory. So these are often much larger files. There's more movement in them. We might go somewhere in the Netherlands to film a forest, or in Belgium, as we've recently done in the Ardennes, or we might go to Jordan to film, for example, wicked problems like water management in Jordan. We also have 3D CGI animated assets, and of course, those vary in size. Here we were busy last year or a year and a half ago with virtual production, creating rich environments. And so these are all types of objects, not only the finished video, but the assets, the component assets that we have to figure out how to store somewhere. So our current cycle works as such. We start by producing a piece of media, and parallel to that, I have that here as a step 2, but it actually happens in parallel to. We capture the metadata about that piece of content. So, for example, if it's a video, it might just be a title, author, tags. If it's an interactive piece of media, it might also describe the supplemental layers. Once that media has been created, it's automatically loaded, whether that's lecture capture or some other type of asset, to Yuja, and Yuja is our enterprise video platform that we use. And the media asset is then paired with the metadata. After which, once it's in Yuja, it's also got the auto captions or other automatically generated metadata that Yuja provides that's attached to it. And then it's published from point 0, year 0, or the date of publication, through 4 years, it's left online. And after that, from year 4 to 7, as the informal policy currently stands, a user can ask us to restore that file. So in theory, from year 4 to 7, and we're still waiting to archive a bunch of content from the last couple of years, it would be automatically flagged by a business policy and then moved onto some other storage. But we don't know what that storage is yet. So at current, all of that content still lives on Yuja. We've taken a small intermediary stop about a year or 2 ago to try to take some content off of Yuja because we were coming up against our storage limits. But for the most part, most of this content is still sitting on the platform. So what we'd like to move to really is this yellow box. We'd like to be able to implement these business policies that we already have written to 2 times a year automatically flag the data that needs to be archived off of or somewhere else besides the enterprise video platform. And we have one of those business policies also looks at the usage. Well, we're a small team. We have about 4 people who would actively be doing this work, who are either system administrators or functional administrators. And those are the people for whom these business policies do the heavy lifting. So for what we are legally required to do at the moment is take all of our media assets from year 4 through year 7 and regardless of where they're archived, be able still to restore them to the point of distribution, which again, in our case is UJA. And whether or not we do that through UJA or we do that locally or we do that through a different service is the question. Currently, we have about 101 terabytes of information. It probably won't surprise most of you that 40% of those are transcodes. What we currently believe to be the case is legally we are required to archive about 25 terabytes of that information that we haven't. So we're not compliant. We're waiting on a retention policy to take that action. And we have those policies written, but we just haven't put them into place yet. So here's the challenges that here's the challenge. It sounds like somebody's unmuted. I'll just throw that out there for everybody listening. Here's the challenges that we're trying to answer or that we've come up against. One is just purely the technical gaps. So we manage all of the content, but of course, many users are the people who are actually implementing and using this content to teach. So how do we ensure that regardless of what we do and regardless of how automated that system for archiving is, how do we ensure that the user knows that it's been archived? Because of course, as we see in that light blue box to the right, these content or these pieces of content are being used across multiple systems. They're both in learning management systems as well as on public-facing systems. So how do we ensure that once we start archiving, that our users aren't surprised by something missing? And then, of course, as I mentioned, we have a small team. So how can we systematize the archiving, but ensure that the metadata that is being leveraged to do that automated archiving is also accurate? And at current, what we've done, and we did it about a year and a half ago, is we did a few tests of automated archiving. And what we discovered is as great or as complete of metadata sets as we do have, there of course are also gaps. So we ran into, I can't remember the percentage, but it was a significant percentage of assets that had incomplete metadata. And sometimes that was just a description of what was being presented in a video, but sometimes it was key metadata, a course that it was related to, an author. So how do we also systematize the metadata checks to make sure that what we're using then to execute our business policies actually functions? And then finally, one of the things we've run up against is the fact that we have a very fragmented storage system. And I think probably a lot of people today can relate to that. So you have project files that are stored locally probably. You have files on a SOS system somewhere else. We also have a disaster recovery backup service. And so we have files with some redundancy living locally as well as off-prem for the university. So how do we ensure that when we start to archive all of those assets, that archiving happens across all of those systems? And here's what we've looked at. So we've looked at options available through the enterprise video platform that we currently have. So they produce and sell for an extra cost an additional module through which you can take an asset currently live and move it to Glacier storage. The great thing about this is that a user, if they come upon an asset that has been archived, they can just click on a button to request the restoration of that asset. That seemed really attractive to us, but then we asked ourselves the question of what do you get for that ease of access? Do we actually need to restore these files? And I think that's something, Peter, that I heard you comment on as well. So why are we archiving? To what extent do we need to be spending money and creating complexities in our system to restore which type of content. And here, when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking specifically about assets that were published more than 4 years ago, but less than 7 to 10 years ago. So we still need to be able to restore those assets. And this, to work this way is costly. So the current vendor that we use charges a fair amount of money for this extra module and for the Glacier storage. We've also looked at other archiving options. So Peter talked a lot about tape. We've looked at that as well through a group in the Netherlands called SURF. Some of you might be familiar with them. It sounds nice for long-term storage, but the constrained access raises the question of why are we storing things if we don't actually need to use it? So it might be cost effective. It's a great alternative to transferring ownership, which is an option that we also have here in the Netherlands, is we can transfer ownership to a provincial archive, but they don't want just everything. So does that then work for us? And recently, together with a group called the KAWO, which is an association of a number of different Belgian and Dutch universities, or media teams from Dutch universities, we've looked at transferring content together to, or what the options might be, I should say, to the Institute for Sound and Vision. So they provide a service in the Netherlands that has sort of a multimedia asset management-like interface for archiving. They provide gradients of access. So for example, if you have medical collections, which Wageningen doesn't, but other of our partners in the KAWO do, then could you provide a limited or specific access to those collections over longer term? They utilize proxies for searching. So if you have a ton of content that is archived elsewhere or in maybe a lower cost way, can you still provide access to search through to find while not actually having to pay higher costs by having that those assets live on more costly storage? And they leverage robust metadata to both ingest content as well as then make it available for people to search. So this is an interesting opportunity. I can't say much about it because we literally have just started looking at this together as a working group, but this is an option that we're considering structurally. So to answer that question of what do you do in the long term, not years 4 to 7, but 7+. And there's some considerations for us, for Wageningen as an organization. So we're currently not compliant with the rules about archiving. There's, of course, as I think everybody here would know, there's the cost versus clarity trade-off. So do you go with a more costly storage because it simplifies everything? Or do you go with a lesser costly storage knowing that it's going to make your content harder to access over the long term? There's the restoration risk. So in the Netherlands, at least, we're required to be able to restore a piece of content. So if you then transfer it out of your enterprise video platform or out of a SaaS environment, it takes more manual work and can be disruptive, especially for my small team. And then the question of permanent storage. So I think to me, this is Peter's question: is what is necessary and who pays for it and who's responsible for it for longer term. And for me, that's why it's really interesting to work with the KAWO in the Netherlands so far to try to figure out, might we do this in a collaborative way? Because ultimately, maybe some of this content is a question of national interest versus local organizational. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Tim. Very interesting mix of technical solutions and then thinking about possible solutions. Very inspiring. Okay. Please, if you have questions, leave them in the chat so that we pick them up after the next presentation, for which I would like to introduce Jean-Marie Cognet, Jean-Marie Cognet is CEO of Ubicast since 20 years. He's always been involved with educational technology with Ubicast, but also as a vice president of the French EdTech organization in charge of higher education. And he will, I'm sure, explain some of his views on maybe some technical solutions of the problems that we have heard about, and maybe also refer some similar situations that he knows in the French EdTech community. Jean-Marie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mati. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be with you today. First of all, sorry for my strong French accent. I think you will understand me, but it's always a good thing to warn you before. So yes, I'm the Ubicast co-founder. So we are editing a private video platform called Nudges. So this video lifecycle management topic is a growing challenge. I think almost everyone is talking about it. And the idea of this precise webinar came out from our UB think tank. So we are gathering our clients once a year. And it was a topic that was really concerning for everyone. So that's why we tried to discuss it together. I don't know if I will have all the solutions, but I will try to give you my take on this topic as a video platform editor. So yeah, I'll try to make it short and sweet. First of all, so the deletion dilemma, and I think we talked about it during the last two presentations through Peter and Jim presentation. So there is the fear of deletion because Peter, you said, should we throw it all away? That's maybe not a good idea. But also keeping everything is not a good idea either. So yeah, that's where balancing preservation and management is the most difficult challenge. Everyone has a growing media storage capacity right now. It's growing and growing and growing, and it has three main impacts. Cost, obviously, because storage is not free, especially now with what is happening. You see the cost of a hard drive right now. It's like crazy high, and it's growing. You have the environment impact also, the footprint. And security, because somewhere the more content you store, the more sensitive information you handle, and so you could like have a breach on this. Second observation: everyone has not one media type but various media types, and that's really important because it will have an impact on the rest of the conversation. So lecture capture, we talked about it. Short pedagogical videos, so like a green screen, MOOC, remote digital learning videos, conferences and events that are also another animal, tutorials, and so on. So one size fits all doesn't work. It means, in my opinion, in our opinion at Ubicast, you can't apply the same rule for a yearly captured lecture and for a conference. One media type should equal one retention policy. It's really important because, yeah, they don't have the same value. Pedagogical, historical value, if you talk with people from the archiving teams, historical value, pedagogical value, and so on. So what are the common mistakes we observe? The first one, and Tim, you spoke about it, metadatas. Metadatas, they are really important because without extensive tags, automated or enriched metadatas, it becomes, in fact, dark data. I mean, it's really difficult to identify and hence to delete the right content at the right time. So having exhaustive metadatas is really one key. Then you have searchability. The more video you stored, even full of metadatas, the more difficult it becomes to find the relevant part of these videos. It's what we can call the searchability tax. You also need to keep a clean house to be able to search within. And I think it's really important. And it reminds me your point, Peter, about this former searcher. You had to create the image because you couldn't find it. So it was on tape, so maybe it's more difficult to find it back, but but metadata and searchability, yeah, it's a topic there. Then it's about indicators, because what we see very often is that people use generic KPIs to adopt deletion strategy. For example, I want to delete the videos that have less than 5 views on the last 12 months. But it's difficult to apply this because for a conference where a prime minister came in your institution like 5 years ago, maybe you will have 0 views, but you can't delete it because it has a archiving value, it's history. So generic indicators won't work for everything. And last but not least, and you talked about it, Tim, also, exit strategy. If you change your provider, if you never keep the house clean, it's really difficult. What will we migrate? What will we keep? And so on. And it's a pain because you don't have the metadatas, you didn't apply the retention policies, and so on. And I think preparing exit strategy should be anticipated, or at least predefined, from the very start of the video platform projects, because it can become a nightmare the day you want to operate it. So which content should I keep? Where is it located? Is it still used by pedagogy? Or does it have value for archiving teams and so on? And then last slide, how to define a sustainable video strategy. So I don't want to make like the Ernst & Young consultant, but maybe give some hints about my experience and what we can see on a European level. So the first point is onboard one executive sponsor in the project. Because if you don't have an executive sponsor in the project, you have Peter infernal health circle, where you start from the beginning every year. The most successful projects I saw were onboarding one executive sponsor who was leading the way and promote the deletion, or at least the strategy institution-wide. It's really important because the instructors, the teachers, they will follow the executive sponsor, but maybe not the media services. I'm sorry, but it's like this. So yeah, you have to have an executive sponsor with you. The second one is about the archiving strategy. I mean, the qualities. If you save only the original quality and you remove the transcodings, that was one of your point, Tim, you will save a lot of storage capacity. And if you have the original quality, you can retranscode it later if you need it, if you need adaptive bitrate. But you could at least save or store only one file after some years. It will have positive impact on the costs of your storage and also on the environment. Sort media types, and I go back to my first and original point. If lecture capture, it could be 2 years because it has to be recorded every year as a web lecture. And then why storing it 7 years if it will be recorded again next year? So 2 years because one for safety, but yeah. But maybe conference will be there permanently for forever because it has this historical value. So once again, one type equal one policy. And then select European providers. Why that? Because we have no impact about extraterritorial regulations. They are not applying, which means digital sovereignty, which means trust, which means security, I guess. Because we don't know what can happen. I mean, this same conversation a year ago wouldn't be the same. But what happened within the last 12 months, it was quite, strange. So yeah, your data, the more videos, the more content you store, the more sensitive data you can is handled within your storage. So where is it located? Who is the company handling this data? And this is it.
Thank you very much, Jean-Marie. I think this is a very interesting helicopter view of the whole landscape of issues and maybe also some suggestions for solutions. Thank you very much. Very interesting. I don't see any questions yet, so I'm taking the privilege of asking a question following up on where you started your various media types. So I think when we talk about life cycle, we should start at the beginning of the life cycle, the production when the media is created. And you have made a distinction: lecture capture, short pedagogical videos, conferences, tutorials. Yeah, a tutorial for software, for example, as I said in the beginning, may be outdated after 3 months. So yeah, why keep it for the rest of your life? But that needs kind of a policy at the beginning when you start creating the different types. So I have a question for Tim and Peter. Do you have a policy like that already in place where you decide at the moment of creation? Let's start with you, Tim.
Yeah, the short answer is no. So there's a national policy in the Netherlands which governs archiving and specifically types of data created for education. Now, the reality is that, and we had to address this a couple of years ago, when you actually try to interpret that policy, you need another 3 or 4 layers until you can actually get to something that's functional, that you can work with. And so what we currently have is maybe 2 layers deeper where we've interpreted that policy. We've talked with archivists about, okay, how is this interpreted across universities in the Netherlands? We've also had that conversation with other universities. So we feel we have an archetype of the different types of data, at least in our case that apply to Wageningen, and several partner universities have that as well. And that is something functional, but that doesn't go as far as actually a policy that we then can use at the point of production. Mm-hmm. So that's my long-winded answer.
Peter?
It depends. So for lecture capture, we've got the automated process in place, and the durations there were chosen based on the longest possible degree you could do was 7 years. And you should be able to access all the materials that you've been taught and your degree. So that was a decision there. For kind of more produced video that's produced by my team, it depends who the customer is. So if we are doing it for the university as a centralized function, it generally gets kept forever. Mm-hmm. If it's being produced for an external group, such as the National Health Service, generally we'll just we'll give them the finished video and we'll keep a copy of that. And that will stay in our archive. Well, I say archive, file store, and just live there forever. But we should probably have a better process.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go to some of the questions that are coming in now. First question, could you please share with us the name of some European providers? Well, this is an open door for you, Jean-Marie. Ubicast is one. That's also one member of Media and Learning. But I'm also going to mention European providers, German, also a member of Media and Learning. And I don't know, Peter or Tim, you have other providers in mind? Off the top of my head, not directly, but what we will do, I'll do a little bit more research and we'll put that also together with the notes from this webinar. So if you have other ideas, I don't know, Jean-Marie, you have names of competitors?
Yeah, you name them, but also I think it's really important to see where the data is located. So, okay, obviously at Ubicast, we are European, we are a 25 people company and so on, but we store the data in a European company called OVH. And I think this is also really important. It's not at AWS, Microsoft, or Google servers. And that was my point, because you also have European edtech companies, they are using AWS, OpenAI, and so on, and then everything is flying over the sea, and yeah, you are on the US data servers, data centers. Yeah.
I want to add to that at the Media and Learning Conference in June, we'll have a specific session dedicated to sovereignty about this subject on how to safeguard, in fact, our European privacy and security. Okay, a question for everybody, I think, from Eric. What do you do after producing a video? Do you save the raw materials or just the finished master file? Peter?
Comes back to what I said previously about depends who it's for. If it's for the university, we'll keep everything because likely we're going to reuse it or re-edit it in the future. If it's for an external, then no, we'll just keep the finished product.
And you charge for that if necessary to externals?
It's complicated, but yes.
Okay, as always, yes. Tim?
Yeah. So we stopped doing work for externals. We namely prioritize work for campus-based degree programs. And we do save all of those files. Any raw material associated with lecture capture, it automatically phases itself out locally on the capturing device once a certain storage limit is reached. But I assume that wasn't as much a part of the question as media projects, and those we do save, yeah. And we don't really actually properly have a time limit for those.
Mm-hmm. Okay, question for Tim again. You mentioned interactive media production. Can you mention some applications that you use for their creation?
Yeah, the predominant one, because we have a site license for the entire university, is H5P. That's the authoring tool, yeah.
Oh, okay. And Tim, what will you do the day that you reach storage limit but have nothing left that's easy to let go?
That's a great question. So we actually had to do this already twice. And I don't know how open I should be about this, but I guess I'll follow Peter because he was very open about also angry reactions. We basically deleted what we could and we moved some content offline. But for the most part, we got rid of what we could. And I personally, from my own professional perspective, don't see that as sufficient, but it was really sort of push comes to shove. When you're waiting on policy, that's exceptionally sluggish.
Mm-hmm. Any reactions, Peter?
No, I mean, it's a very, very selective process, but we've not come across it really because up until now, the rate of our storage growth has been faster than the rate of our content growth. But as storage gets more expensive, that might become a problem.
Jean-Marie, your reaction?
Yeah, I wanted to know if, Tim, you use the tags because you told us that you can insert tags into the metadata, and I was thinking that those media types could be identified by tags, and maybe it's a strategy to find which type of content to delete first.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, no, that's a great comment. Yeah, so that is exactly how we did that. Those two occasions that I referenced were the first times that we actually implemented business policies, and we were really happy with how it worked. It for a very small team, it made operating at scale quite easy. So it's encouraging. I will say though that also in that process, again, we discovered where the gaps are, and as great as our metadata systems are, or processes more like it, yeah, there still are places where we just don't have the right data, so we let those sit.
And you told us that you also have a business policy that is written. So what do you need? You need the executive sponsor to push to
That's
implement
it.
it?
Yep.
Okay.
I wrote that down with a smiley face.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a few more questions coming in from Marcus Tischner. Who decides in your institution what is to be archived long term, and who decides who pays for it? Just around Peter.
I mean, that's exactly my problem in that I ask people, should we keep it? And they say yes. And I say, are you going to pay for it? And they say no. And here we are. So we had a project to archive all our paper documents. And I said, great, you've got a sponsor, it's all happening. Have you considered including video and photo in your project? And they said, oh, it's too expensive. So it's still all sat in a cupboard waiting for someone to want to deal with it.
Mm. This is an interesting question. How do you in the content for GDPR purposes, if someone asks you to delete a recording, they are part of, do you have any way of finding them in your archived materials, for example? Who wants to go first?
I'll
Tim?
go first. Oh, I can.
Oh, Peter, go ahead. Yeah.
I'll be brief. I'll say that if we've gathered consent for them to be in the video, I think we would interpret that as including consent for them to be tagged in the metadata.
But what, so they then have also the right to withdraw. So how do you handle that?
We would just delete the tag and the video, I suppose.
Even
Or edit
if,
it, or edit it and edit them out if that's possible.
Mm.
It occasionally happens.
Okay. Tim, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it for me it begs the question of how current is the piece of media you're referencing, because I would my answer would be the same as Peter's, because we have that information in the metadata, but I don't know that if somebody was asking us for a piece of content that was from 15 years ago, or in Peter's examples 30 years ago, we do also have content from quite a number of years ago. I don't know if we'd be able to actually find the people to contact them, just functionally speaking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Question a little bit related, and maybe for you, Jean-Marie, because you have a good overview of what's happening in the industry as well. Do you see AI doing the reviewing of archives and producing metadata for them anyway, anytime soon, especially for the old videos?
It could, but it will be expensive, as Peter said, because yes, you can. AI is definitely capable of that. For me, today, AI for video production is not good for pedagogical videos, not good enough. Maybe in the next future, but today, not good enough. But to create metadata, so subtitles, translation of the subtitles, generating abstracts of the videos, quizzes, and so on. So tags, metadatas, very good. So why not on archives? Identifying faces, maybe, and matching with people with like a, yeah, I think it could already today, but at what cost?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Maybe having an AI on premise, an offline one that you could, run on your data centers could be, less expensive.
Yeah.
Mm.
If I can just chime in, we've actually done now 2 separate experiments, but what functional, not just to play around with this exactly. So where we've identified gaps in our metadata, we've had them scanned, and all that has been run locally. So we've generated missing metadata using that, and I believe that if I remember the percentage correctly, it did above 80% satisfaction. I'm not sure if I'm translating this correctly, but so my colleagues were very happy. So in some places it didn't work exactly like we'd wanted it, but it worked very effectively.
Yeah, that may be an interesting topic for the next webinar next year if we see how this, because this evolves very rapidly, but also time goes very quickly. So I have to unfortunately close the discussion. We are going to take the questions that have not been answered, and we're going to try to have them answered for everybody and share the answers. The recordings and the presentation will be uploaded hopefully within a week, next week or something. And I'm happy to hand over to Shirin, who will update you on next events that may be of interest to you all. Thank you very much to the presenters, and I hope to see you at the next webinar. Shirin, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Marty, and thank you all for joining us. Thank you for our speakers. It was really interesting topic for myself. So we have 2 more events in this season. One at 20th of May, From Policy to Practice, Advancing Generative AI Literacy in Higher Education, and the other one about gamification, support meaningful learning in higher education on 21st of May. So if you're interested in those topics, please make sure to register yourself. And after those webinars, we will of course have our annual conference, Media and Learning, 17th and 19th of June. The registration is open now, and talking about the conference, maybe it's a good time to announce that every year we draw one name for a free pass amongst those who actually filled out our annual survey. So I'm gonna share my other screen now. Yeah, to draw that name actually with all of you. I'm gonna shuffle the names. This is the list of those who filled out our annual survey. And we are going to pick one name for that free conference pass. Yes, Juha Takanen. We're gonna contact him and yeah. Not much left to say, just that if you are not a member of our association, consider to join us to have more activities and to be more involved in our activities. And if you do so before our conference, you'll get a pass for 100 euros instead of 400. And thank you so much for joining us today. Wish to see you next time.